Is the Tor network still safe to use? There was an article that came out this last week which suggested it may not be. But what are the actual facts in this particular situation? Welcome back to Switch to Linux, where we talk about Linux and privacy and other things relating to that field. And today we want to talk a little bit about the Tor network. And this is an interesting topic, and there's so much we can say about it. The first thing is there privacy available on the internet? And there are people that say there is absolutely no possibility of any form of privacy on the internet. And I find that completely not true. Now, it does depend on what you're doing and how you are doing it. All right. If you're logging into an account somewhere and you're allowing full cookies and everything else, yeah, there's no privacy on the internet. But if you're being a fly on the wall and you are taking a lot of extra safety protocols and you are doing things correctly, yes, there is a degree of privacy available to you on the internet. And that is what Tor is really designed to do. Now, it is, of course, possible to have accounts through Tor, and not like Tor itself, the service, but if I wanted to have a Facebook account on Facebook's Tor node, yes, they have one, then the best way to keep yourself anonymous as possible. And number one, obviously, do not use any information on an account that ties back directly to you. And you also want to avoid doing anything on Tor that you would do not on Tor, and vice versa. And that is where one of the challenges is. I had a friend that's always experimenting with things and was using Tor and then logging into Google accounts. I'm like, that completely defeats the purpose. So you use Tor for small things here and there. You might look at it to, look at that rash or research something that you just don't want to constantly see ads about, or something you just don't want logged in, whatever that happens to be. And I'm not saying that's going to be something illegal. Obviously, if you do illegal things, you deserve to get caught. And if you repeatedly do illegal things, you are going to make a mistake eventually. And I think that that is part of what happened here. Now, how does Tor work? Effectively, it works by creating a network where everybody coming into the network looks like the same person, and then it will encrypt everything through multiple layers of encryption. So you would access an entry node into Tor. That encrypts the traffic into a center node into Tor, and then that further encrypts the traffic to an exit node into Tor. And then the exit node is the one that actually reaches out to the service you're trying to reach, whether that's DuckDuckGo, Facebook, or some of these hidden onion sites is what they call them. And the idea is that the exit node where the site traffic is gets encrypted enough times that by the time it gets back to the entry node, it becomes impossible to figure out who that is because multiple other people are using the same node. And so the traffic basically becomes befuddled by gray noise. That's effectively how the system is supposed to work. Now, the question came up, and this was a few years ago, where it was discovered some compromised nodes, and what they've been attempting to do is a timed data packet type approach, where if somebody were able to control an entry node and an exit node, and they would be able to share that data between them, you could, in theory, de-anonymize somebody. Now, steps were taken to fix that issue. Number one, removing a lot of old bad nodes, which were all controlled by the same actors. And number two, adding in some extra encryption protocols, which would secure your traffic even further. And so these timed analysis attacks are what is in the news here. And from what I'm looking at here, it almost looks as though the articles are coming out trying to scare people away from using the Tor network in hopes that they're going to use something that is a lot easier to track down the road. And so that is what the subject of this happens to be. So let's go ahead and investigate what happened here a little bit. And we don't have all of the details, and that is part of the problem. In fact, that is what Tor said. Hey, give us the details and we'll tell you what we really think happened, because according to them, they say, I don't actually think that our Tor network was compromised as much as it was somebody was using an insecure piece of software. And that, of course, is one of the issues. Now, in this case, it becomes a difficult one to be on Tor's side because it was used to take down who allegedly is a pretty bad cyber criminal. So again, though, if you're using Tor repeatedly and habitually to do bad things, eventually you're going to make a mistake and you're going to be found out. This is not the first time somebody has used Tor and had been figured out. Such great cases were the Pirate Bay, right? Was that the Pirate? Yeah, it was the Pirate Bay, where that person used Tor almost exclusively. The mistake that person made was to use the same user asking a question on a forum in the ClearNet that he was able to be tied back to his node on Tor. And that is how they de-anonymize in this case. And this is why the deep surveillance state is not nearly as useful. It collects too much data. You can't sort through it all. But if you do good old-fashioned police work, you still can. And so let's have a look at the case here. So this comes from NDR. This is Panorama. And this is, I believe, is this from Denmark? Or I don't know. It's not United States. And so we'll start with this. I'm not going to, every time I accidentally say, hey, this is from this, I make a mistake. Whatever. NDR.de. Whatever that happens to be. All right. Or is that Dutch? I don't know. Anyway, let's go ahead and dig through it. So they say the investigation in the so-called darknet, law enforcement agencies undermine Tor anonymization. And the subheading here is the Tor network is considered the most important tool for surfing the internet anonymously. Law enforcement agencies have apparently begun to infiltrate it in order to expose criminals, and they have been successful in at least one case. And so let's have a look at what's going on. So this all happens down in Germany. And in Germany, what they were doing is they were investigating one particular user. So that's your first issue. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't be like, I am leading this marketplace on Tor. Neener, 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 you can't find me. Because they're going to hyper-focus on you and devote all the resources. Now, again, if you're just an anonymous person jumping on and using Tor and you're not leaving behind a trace that says, hey, 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 come find me, I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing over here, they're not going to be looking at you. And the way Tor works makes it extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, using current technologies anyway, to figure out exactly who you are and what's going on, nor do they really care. But if you happen to be leading a site, and we'll get to the site name here in a bit, which apparently is really bad, and the site didn't expound on what it is, and I'm not sure I want to know, then the person apparently was an administrator leaving behind this constant trace of constantly being here and giving the ability to use what is called this timed analysis. So what happened here is, according to the research data, the German authorities see this particular site and pay attention to one of these administrators. And they start hyper-focusing on this administrator. And it turns out that they were able to track down that this administrator was using Tor exit nodes out of Netherlands. Now, Germany, Netherlands, and United States have the most overall Tor exit nodes. And so, being on the Netherlands, they start investigating what's going on here, and the Netherlands and Germany are sharing data back and forth. And what ends up happening is they do this timing analysis, which effectively means that they're going to control one of those nodes, and then they watch all the data packets going out of it. And then what they're able to do is try and reverse piece back together which ISP or whatever else is going on. So, of course, Germany being Germany goes up to a local ISP. It turns out that the person was in Germany, so they had a local Germany IP. This information became known to them, and they're like, it'd be really bad if something happened to your services. So the ISP handed over data. Now, the question is, where did that data come from? Did it come from a compromise on the Tor network, or did it come from a compromise somewhere else? Because, one way you can get around this is have a web page, load some JavaScript, and a JavaScript code could break out of the Tor network and unmask your real IP address. that's something that you can do. Now, of course, let's get into this point, as the article here makes this point here, that not all uses of Tor are bad. Just because somebody is using Tor does not mean that you are doing something illegal. All right, we look back to the case we talked about on the Weekly News Roundup a couple weeks ago, where there was this massive data breach in Columbus, Ohio, which was so massive and so critical. Whoever is in charge of their network needs to be fired and prosecuted. It was that bad. And then they're trying to cover it up. And a security researcher says, no, you just need to jump onto Tor, and all of the data is publicly available on Tor. Well, that just requires hacking stuff. No, it doesn't. It requires downloading a software package that is available for every single device known to man. Okay, my Graphene OS phone here routes everything through Tor that's not directly related to one of my servers. So my email servers, my Nextcloud servers, I don't route that traffic through Tor. Everything else on this phone, outside of a couple breakout applications, all routes everything through Tor. Why do I do that? Well, because I just don't want whatever is going on my phone to be used for marketing and spying and data collection and aggregation and all this other nonsense. If we had strong laws in this country preventing companies from collecting and harvesting this data when I want to look up something as simple and ridiculous as a movie on the internet, then, I'm routing everything through Tor. It's very easy to do on an Android phone. You install the Orbot application, and then you go into the VPN mode and you select which applications you want to route through Tor and which ones you do not want to route through Tor. And that's simple, easy as it goes. And so what they're talking about here is they use Tor in order to make sure that they can have anonymous mailboxes so that whistleblowers can transmit data securely to this individual journalistic company here that is doing the research and collecting the facts. And so it's not all instances of using Tor are nefarious. It's a lot of it. I use it a lot because I just don't want these companies to track it down. And even though I'm really good at privacy and security outside of Tor, Tor adds the extra layer if I want to look something up. I was looking up movies and stuff. I went to see a movie with a friend yesterday, and I just had to look up the show times and things like that. I don't want some AMC theaters tracking down, the IP address and everything else going on. Like, oh, this is an IP address we can use. No, route that to Tor, thank you. So that's the type of stuff that I use it for. So here's where it gets into the infiltration. So what they're doing here is they are connecting to several different nodes, doing the timing analysis. Now, to these guys' discussion, this is the very first time a timing analysis was allegedly properly used in order to de-anonymize somebody. But in reality, it was not Tor as much as it was the Ricochet chat service. So the Ricochet is apparently, I've never heard of this one. This was a chat application. And there was a vulnerability in an older version of it. And what happened is this site, they say, is a pedocriminal darknet platform called Boys Town. I don't want to know what they do over there. But the person was an administrator, and they labeled the guy's name as Andrea G, I think, is who the person is they were looking for. And Andrea G was apparently one of the moderators of this site, and what they were using Ricochet app between all of the moderators in order to track down, basically communicate about the site. Well, there was a vulnerability which allowed data to leak out of this particular app, and that appears to be how the data was discovered. And so in response to figure out which servers they were, they tracked this back to Frankfurt, and the provider of this person's internet, Telefonica, was demanded by the German courts to hand over all of their customers that connected to a variety of identified Tor nodes. Those Tor nodes, of course, were provided by the Netherlands. And so the arrest in North Rhine-Westphalia, that is in Germany. This happened in December in 2022, and rightly so, they sentenced this guy to many years in prison. Because when you're using the Tor network or the internet to do horrible things like this, then yes, you need to go to jail and you need to be found. And in this case, they found a vulnerability in the software that he was using, not the Tor itself, but the software. And so in this case here, they're getting into how some of this stuff is being used. And they end the article saying that the Tor project is now becoming radically insecure. So revelations are a major blow for the Tor project, the nonprofit organization based in USA, which aims to ensure maintenance of the anonymization network, stated on request that it was not aware of any documented case of a timing analysis. So far, however, there was nothing to suggest that the Tor browser had been attacked, a spokesman of the organization said. Quote, Tor users continue to use the Tor browser to access the web securely and anonymously. A representative of Ricochet, which is now called Ricochet Refresh, said that she was not aware of any other cases of de-anonymized users. The software has been improved in recent years and one of the safest ways to communicate online, she says. So Matthias Marks, now this is from CCC. This is the Chaos Computer Club, a club in Germany. They said they warn of the consequences of the measure. This technical possibility exists not only for German law enforcement authorities to prosecute serious criminals, but also for unjust regimes to prosecute the opposition members and whistleblowers. Tor project is therefore now under pressure to improve anonymity and protection. Now, I did look into the CCC. They have not published anything on this article. However, the CCC was given direct access to all of the documents involved and was able to analyze what was going on. Tor project was asked for a comment on this, but they were not provided the documents. And I think that that's intentional. They do not want to provide the documents to the Tor project because it will help in many cases strengthen or ensure that Tor is still safe, because every bit of evidence suggests it was either one of the compromised Tor nodes or it was a compromised app, not the Tor project itself. And that happens to be what the question centered around this is. Now, first and foremost, let's address this. Obviously, I have mentioned before that you will use cases like this to try and break encryption, destroy anonymity and things like this, because obviously just based on what's in the article and the name of the site, I imagine that they're doing things that are fairly uncouth. And because of that, they're using this to say, oh, see, we got to get rid of this Tor project because it's so terrible. The problem is Tor also protects legitimate people from lawful means in authoritarian regimes. It prevents whistleblowers from being discovered as easily, and it does a lot of other good. You think about cases. For me, I'm a Christian, and Christianity is deeply oppressed in some countries, and you can get onto Tor and download copies of the Bible or sermons or study notes so that you can practice a faith and a religion in a persecuted country without the risk of a data trail being sent back to you. In fact, this is why I love the And Bible app, which you can download on F-Droid, which you can also download that anonymously through Tor. You can install that onto your phone and make the app look like something else, like a calculator or a note app or something like that. And then it would require you to push a couple of extra buttons to get into the Bible application so that people in persecuted countries can have the Bible on their phone. And that app does not connect to the internet unless you explicitly ask it to download a copy of a book, which you can still sideload as well. But it will make the app look like some other app so you can safely have that on your phone, at least better precaution, have it on your phone. And so in that instance, Tor is very good and we need to keep it around, even though, yes, there are bad people using it. And that's the trade-off between privacy and security, and not security as in digital security, but security as far as, am I going to have authoritarian people kicking down my doors? I'd rather not have authoritarian people kicking down my doors asking me how I'm storing my firearms or what I'm looking at on the internet or anything else like that. And I'd rather have the basic privacy. And if I'm doing something wrong, look for those mistakes and track me down. Don't make yourself a moderator of an uncouth site if you do not want to draw attention to yourself on the internet. Because if you're doing such things, then yes, they will look into you and you will be taken down because you will make a mistake. Now, that is all the news there, but what does Tor happen to say? So they published this blog post last week that said, is Tor still safe to use? So in it, they are, of course, referencing that article, and they were, as I said here, they were not given any of the detailed information. What they were handed is a basic outline and summary, and then they were asked broad sweeping questions, and they're like, well, give us the data. Of course, no one wants to give them the data, and so they are actually asking for people to anonymously tip them any of the data that they have, because this is something they want to look into. Because as of right now, as far as all of the available data that's been made public, this type of attack is not an easy attack. It was theoretically possible, but this is the first time that they allege it has actually been happened. However, what they say is that from the limited information, we believe that one user of the long retired Ricochet application was fully de-anonymized through a guard discovery attack. So this is possible because they were using a copy of the software that did not have the guard protection. So this is Vanguard's Lite or the Vanguard's add-on, which were introduced to protect specifically from this type of attack. So the Ricochet refresh does have this in there. So since version 3.0.12 released in June of 2022. So Vanguard Lite released in Tor 0.4.7 protects against the possibility of combining an adversary-induced circuit creation with the circuit-based covert channel in order to obtain malicious middle relay. So this is designed to protect against this type of timing analysis. They also note that the timing analysis was conducted between 2019 and 2022. I think this is down a little bit further. It's up here somewhere. Somewhere in here, they had mentioned that it was between 2019 and 2022, which there was some question about. Here it is down here. The 2019 and 2021, which the network health team flagged thousands of bad relays, which directory authorities had voted to remove. These include directories from single operators or tried to enter the network in large scales. So they found a lot of these and they mitigated against this particular type of attack further in 2021. So the investigation, they say, goes back to that era when there was some issues. So if you did really bad, nefarious things back in 2019 to 2021, you might get a knock on your door sometime soon. Now they do talk about the responsible disclosure. The CCC was provided access to the documents related to the case to provide their analysis. However, the Tor project was only given a rough summary and was asked sweeping generalities. So given the potential risk to the users, we decided to go public, they say. We request anyone with additional information about the case to share it with us. This would allow us to conduct our own analysis and determine the best course of action to protect our users. To be clear, the Tor project did not intend to ask for the sources of the story, but sought to understand what evidence existed for a de-anonymization attack to accurately respond to the investigating reporter's questions and to assess our disclosure responsibilities. So this is kind of what they are talking about. They do say we continue to have an interest in obtaining more information about how the Onion services users were de-anonymized. If we have access to the same documents, it would be possible to produce a report with more clarity regarding the actual state of the network and how it affects the greater majority of users. But that's what they don't want to do. The authorities don't want to do that. They provide information. If you have any information that you want to reach out to them to, that's in their article. This is on their blog. So another important thing to mention is the longevity of user connections for such timing analyses. One of the things Tor does these days is it will bounce relays every so often, which protects against this type of approach. And so over here, you can read through the rest of it, but ultimately it is important in this highly censored world to keep the Tor network up to date and, just implore people, do not break the law on these services. It causes a lot of damage to an otherwise good and useful service, which is going to prevent people from, in practicing their human rights, not being tracked and surveilled, and allowing people to practice their faith without being compromised by regime that wants to persecute them. Additionally, it allows reporters to hand over information more anonymously, protect their own selves from digital trails. And these are the things that helped. I mean, you think back to the Snowden releases. The Snowden discoveries and the Snowden releases really demonstrated that the government is doing things that people assumed they were doing for a long time but had no actual evidence. And this is the type of network that people use these days to release such information, because we all know that despite having strong whistleblower laws, there's no whistleblower laws if you whistleblow against your own government. And that in and of itself is another challenge. So we need to keep Tor safe. And the best way to do that is if you know of actual crimes being committed over Tor, report those to somebody, because frankly, we need to keep this network around. And the more of these stories that pop up with uncouth things on the internet being accessed and used through the Tor networks, the more problems we're going to have with it. And so we need to keep this resource alive and well. But is Tor still safe to use? Well, as long as you're not running stupid things and drawing yourself a lot of attention by running an open to the public, open to the Tor nodes illegal services, and you're not drawing attention to the authorities, yeah, I'm going to say it's safe to use. If you're doing that kind of stuff, stop it. Just stop it. Okay, so there's what I have to say. I think Tor is still safe to use for the majority of users to get on and browse the internet anonymously, look at, look up that strange foot fungus without being tied back to your medical records somehow and your insurance rates go up. Well, you looked at the strange foot fungus on July 22nd, therefore we're raising your rates because we might have to pay for that soon. No. I should be able to look up a foot fungus without my insurance company finding out. But we know from all of the LexisNexis breaches and things like that, we know that all the other apps on these distraction boxes here are handing the data on over to your insurance companies anyway. So no, I'm going to use this to look it up. So there you have it, guys. And just to be clear and total clarity, I don't have any foot fungus. Okay, just telling you. It's just a fun example I use. Anyway, with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the bowling alleys soon.